I want to talk about transportation. You know, I'm a pretty big fan of transportation. I love myself a good road trip. I got to go see Niagara Falls in Toronto once. That was pretty fun. But you know who else loves a road trip? Quite literally everything you own. Our world today is like a massive grocery store. Items are sourced from around the world, no matter the location or the season, and they somehow always appear to be in stock and affordable. But it wasn't always like this. Before any transport invention, you had your body. Now if you're me, your body is an absolute unit, and you have no problem hauling tons across the country. But for most people, your body is a frail and stupidly inefficient way of transport. Eventually wheels came along, but they didn't prove much of a difference to the fact that it was still ridiculously inefficient and hard to transport items over land. It was just hard. There was so much land to cover, and you, or later an animal, had to propel yourself through the whole thing. Boats, however, made a difference. Unlike roads where you have to lay out and maintain the infrastructure, water is free. Even the road-crazy Romans knew this and imported the majority of their food overseas from Egypt. It was more expensive to ship grain 70 miles on a road than sail it 1,400 miles. Humanity kind of rolled like this until finally, thank God finally, they found a way to get out of the shallow end and into the deep. Big boats and better tech meant longer and farther trips, which enabled much of Europe, who got their hands on the tech first, to discover the vast and wider world. However, just because we could ship goods across the planet didn't mean we did exactly. It was just expensive. Half of the end price came from transportation alone, and that's not even bringing up the issue of security on the high seas. Not to mention, few empires even wanted to trade with one another. There was just no logical reason to. Everyone had their own closed little system with their colonies, and had a good time disrupting their opponents. It was evidently this disconnect that turned Europe into a bit of a bloodbath. Cue the Industrial Revolution, a few railroad engineers looked at their humble little cart and said, hey, let's throw a steam engine on it, and poof, the railroad was born. Railways were still double the price of shipping goods on the ocean, but compared to the previous 20 times the price, this is a pretty good deal for overland shipping. Throw in the advent of the steamship, the swapping from paddle wheels to propellers, and the opening of the Suez and Panama canals respectively, and the ocean became fair game for shipping. Distance was becoming ever less of an issue thanks to globe-spanning empires, meaning a ship could carry its own fuel for the trip, resupply at one of the many ports these empires held, and keep chugging along. Importing food, especially into Europe, became incredibly easy and cost-efficient. The vast waterways of the American continent made transportation from the Midwest breadbasket to the port cities incredibly cheap, and these boats then hauled their way across the ocean at a still low price. So much so that Europeans found it easier to literally import food, rather than grow and move domestically. With more technology only came more innovation. Sooner or later, humans had developed the internal combustion engine. This improved how much fuel needed to be carried, as well as the efficiency of rail and boats. It also ushered in a new medium of transport, the humble truck. With the conclusion of World War II and the formation of the new global order led by the United States, shipping was about to have a major overhaul. Now, any nation that is willing to cooperate with America doesn't need to worry about security at all on the high seas, courtesy of the US Navy. This new shift in attention meant that nations didn't have to care at all about security, and turned all their focus into maximizing efficiency, which they did insanely well. Let's look at how you would ship something before and after this order was formed. Say you're a humble grain farmer looking to export some of your hard-earned grain. Firstly, you need to load all that grain into a pallet of some sort in order to ensure it all stays in one place. Then it's loaded onto a truck and sent to a warehouse near a port. It's then loaded out of the warehouse by a team onto a ship. Then another team would secure the pallet for shipping. Finally, it sets sail. Upon arrival at the port, a team has to inspect the pallet, then another team has to load that pallet onto a truck. That truck would head to a rail yard, where another team would load it onto a rail car and be shipped to an unloading facility, where it would be loaded on another truck and shipped to the buyer. Oh my god, this is terrible. Kill me. These ports were inefficient, slow, and costly, which is why they were the first to go once we cracked the code on how to improve the system. The solution, I kid you not, was to put things in boxes. More specifically, the 20 and 40 foot equivalent units, also known as containers. Let's look at how shipping is with these guys. Say you're a humble grain farmer looking to export some of your hard-earned grain. Firstly, you load all your product into a container and seal it. That container is thrown into a truck and driven to a port, where it's stacked with similar boxes until craned right on the ship. The ship then sets sail, and when it arrives, the container is craned off the ship and right onto a truck, then driven to its destination. Wow. Was it really that hard? Thanks to all this, port costs have gone from being half the total cost of shipping to less than 1/5, and by 2019, these barges carried nearly half of all total global trade by value, which is insane. So where is all this going? How is the collapse of the global order going to affect this massive global interconnected system that we've constructed? In a short answer, take away security and it all falls apart. The vast interconnectedness of this global order makes it incredibly vulnerable to one small event. Like a house of cards, if one region somehow gets disrupted, the entire chain gets screwed over. Most global shipping is done in segments rather than one Hail Mary across the planet. Ships will swing by several ports instead of just sailing across the world, unloading and loading new things in the process. Screw up one point along the way and the entire voyage is done for. The absence of the security guarantee will plunge nations into more regional sects of life. Nearly every nation just simply doesn't have the means to patrol the sea outside their regions. It's just a simple fact. Nations can't keep up with the US Navy in terms of global reach. So let's see where these regions are, shall we? Japan, Korea, China, Taiwan, and to a lesser extent some of Southeast Asia all make up this region. You know this region well. You own a lot of things from this region. But the interesting thing about them is they're just mostly the middleman. East Asia imports a lot of their stuff, from raw materials to food to energy. East Asia takes those resources, turns them into finished products, and sends them on their merry way. What this means is they have a ton of shipping coming in and a ton of shipping going out, and they need both to survive. This region, in one word, is vulnerable. With American security, everyone worked with each other, whether they liked it or not, because they knew the profits they would rake in would pay off. Take away that security, and those millennia-long grudges start to rear their ugly heads. China absolutely hates Japan. Japan doesn't trust China. Taiwan has spent the past 7 years with crippling anxiety and now wants nukes. And South Korea just has trust issues with everyone. China has the fastest aging population on Earth, and though possessing a large navy, does not have the reach to protect its trade interests across oceans, meaning it's running out of customers in the nation, losing access to customers outside the nation, and losing access to the necessary imports to survive. So yeah, it's safe to say they have it the worst. Japan, knowing that their demography is, opting for a polite term, screwed, have started outsourcing their labor to more worker-abundant countries. But instead of shipping those products back to Japan, remember, old people don't spend as much, they sell the products in the same local market they get the labor from. They then take that income and send it right back to the older and older Japanese population. Luckily for Japan, they happen to be the only nation in the region that has the capability to secure and protect its trade lines, meaning it's looking like it's set to inherit the region from the ever-tired Americans. Of course, this is only speculation. It's going to be a lot messier than just that, but some things only time can tell. No region has benefited more from this order, and no region is going to be hit harder from the collapse of it. The Persian Gulf is a desert. Deserts, to put it briefly, are not intended to support the massive metropolises that keep popping up in it. Cue oil. This region exports two things, oil and its good buddy natural gas, and pretty much nothing else. While on the other hand, it imports basically everything but oil and natural gas, with the list going from food, to tech, to machinery, to slaves. That is not to say the region will die the second the Americans stop securing trade out of it, especially considering that so much of the world desperately needs the precious oil of the Gulf. But it's going to be a bumpy ride. The nations of the Gulf are incapable of effectively patrolling even their own coastlines, let alone escort tankers coming in and out on a global scale. And no other country can just come in and pick up where the Americans left off security-wise. The US Navy is just that dominant. This means that we get to watch European and Asian countries make desperate attempts to salvage what they can from the looming chaos of destabilized trade. It will be a mess. Europe, though calm now, is the most war-torn and historically unstable region on Earth. The modern Europe we know has been completely reworked by the Bretton Woods system. It'll be interesting as to what they do now with the system unwinding. Europe is incredibly dependent on energy imports, even more so than the Asians. The issue regarding this is that just within the 27 EU member states, no two nations can seem to meet eye to eye on what to do about it. Europe is also getting old. Fast. Europe needs to export to survive since their internal populations are becoming less and less of consumers. Without the US-led order, this export stream shuts down, completely eliminating the possibility to retain European society as to what it is today. The European socialism model, that includes higher taxes and greater social benefits, was only able to survive thanks to the fact that America took over defense. Take America out of the picture, and Europe is either going to have no way to protect their interests, or they're going to need to get some guns. No matter what country you live in, whether you like it or not, you're in some sort of sphere of influence. Whether you're the cool kid in town and you admit the sphere, or you're a country caught up in another's, no nation is safe from one, and this plays an important role in the future of Europe. It's likely that nations who are able to exert their influence and power over others will create mini-Europes, where they will cast an economic, cultural, or even military net over their neighbors. Notable nations with already stable spheres include the UK, France, Germany, Sweden, Turkey, and Russia. Globalization is unraveling, and everywhere in the world is about to feel the burn. Long-haul shipping is the backbone of everything we know as normal, and it requires peace across all regions of the world. Take that away, and 3/4 of all shipments in energy, manufacturing, and agriculture are gone with it.